Hello there, Schism here. I got a 2,500 point battle report. My Ogres versus some Beastmen. Starting off on my opponent's far right, he has a spawn, and then he has a unit of 10 hounds. Behind that building, he has 10 Ungor Raiders. Next to them, there is a Tuskor Chariot. To the left of that, there is 30 Gore with additional hand weapons. To the left of that, he has 30 Best of Gore, and in that unit, he has the Standard of Discipline. Also, a Beast Lord with a ram horn helm, gnarled hide, heavy armor, shield, crown of command. To the left of him, there is a BSB with armored silver, steel, luckstone, and a great weapon. Behind that unit, there is 30 Gore with sword and board. And in there is a level 4 with a talisman of endurance, a dispel scroll, and additional hand weapon. For spells, you roll up Mind Razor, Enfeebling Foe, Miasma, and Pit of Shades, which is a pretty nasty spell set against ogres. Pit of Shades is the initiative test, which is a never good for ogres. Also, Mind Razor for some combat buff and goodness, Enfeebling Foe and Miasma for some awesome debuffs. It's a pretty good spell set, especially for beastmen who need a little help in the combat phase. To the left of the Best of Gore, there is 8 Minotaurs here, the chocolate men there. To the left of that, in the forest, chomping on some foliage, is a Gorgon. To the left of him is another Tuskor Chariot, and to the left of him, rounding out the Beastmen forces, is a Razorgore. Starting off on my left, I have a Saber Tusk. To the right of that, I have 3 Lead Belchers. To the right of that, I have 4 Mournfang Cavalry with no command. And to the right of that, there is a Saber Tusk. Now, I know my Saber Tusks are a little too close to my units, risking panic, but he has no ranged capabilities, including no ranged magic spells besides Pit of Shades, but I highly doubt he's going to try and Pit of Shades a Saber Tusk off the board and try and cause panic that way. So, not really worried about causing panic from ranged. To the right of the Saber Tusk, there is 12 ordinary bowls with a full command. To the right of that unit, there is 12 Iron Guts, and in there is my level 4 with a Dispel Scroll, Talisman of Endurance, and Fencer's Blades. For spells, he rolled up Toothcracker, Bullgorger, Troll Guts, and Brain Gobbler. So 3 nice combat buffs and a Brain Gobbler, which really serves no purpose. And that doesn't really play effect in this game. I cast it a few times, I tickle a few Gore, and then they laugh it off, and no big deal. The Bruiser BSB is also in that unit. He is rocking the armor of silvered steel, luckstone, and a great weapon. That unit also has the Standard of Discipline. To the right of that, there is 2 stone horns. And since I have the models, and I love mammoths, and I like how they look, I figured, hey, I got to use them at some point. So I know it's not a very competitive build, but I wanted to use the models, and now I have a huge threat on this flank. And their biggest thing that they're good at, I guess, is chewing through infantry. And there's plenty of infantry on the Beastman side. So hopefully they'll get their points back in this game, and they're in the right position to do so on this flank. The only thing I'm a little leery of is A, the Minotaurs, and B, the Best of Gore. More so the Best of Gore for their Strength 6 attacks. But hopefully I can get them into the flank or the rear of the unit, and that way I can do some serious damage without taking too much in return. Round out my forces on the far right, there is a lone Saber Tusk. Beastmen win the turn 1, and they shamble forward as 4th. The Raiders go into the building. The Chariot shambles forward, and his main forces in the center move up accordingly. His Gorgon tiptoes through the tulips in the forest, and his Tuskor Chariot and Razorgore match speed as well. In the magic phase, he goes for a few spells, but he's out of range for most, and the rest of it doesn't really matter. So we go to Ogre's turn 1. My Saber Tusk doesn't really look to go after a Razorgore or a Chariot since he is outmatched. And he moves to the outside of their front arcs. Hopefully he'll be able to cause some trouble later. The Lead Betulers move into the building. The Mournfang Cavalry moves up to gauge the Gorgon and the Chariot here. I don't overstep my bounds, but I keep my options open. The Saber Tusk moves up to try and attempt to rile up the Minotaur here. And these are my center lines here, my guts and my bowls and my stone horns here. Now I know I have a movement advantage, and I really want to get charges off with impact hits and all that. So I don't even move these units. I stay here. I know he has to come to me. I actually have more range than he has. I can shoot him with some big harpoon launchers or whatever I need to do. So I sit here and I wait to see where his Minotaurs go. If he takes the bait and he gets frenzied with the stone tusk, the saber tusk there, then I can get a better idea what I'm dealing with in the middle here. I definitely fear Vestigor above all else. And my other Sabertusk on the far right here realizes that there is only futility on this side, and he makes his way back behind my lines. Hopefully he'll find a purpose later in the game. I didn't see a point in just feeding him to the hounds. They don't need to be redirected. If they go into my Stonehorns, they're just going to bounce off, and the spawn is a waste of time as well. And here you can see this one Sabertusk I moved up to bait these Minotaur here to charge into him. In the magic phase, I do get off 2 cracker on my guts just to give him a little extra toughness. There was nothing else to cast, and I only threw a couple dice. I didn't want to risk a miscast. And with the short range of the ogre spells, nothing was really worth doing. The lead belchers open up and take a wound off the chariot. And then we go into Beastman turn 2. He moves up with his Razorgore and his Tuskgore chariot. He moves up a little too close, but I think what he's trying to do is bait my Mournfang to move to the right here and charge way off to the side. If he can get the Mournfang out of the game in that direction, that's a big win for him. He moves his Gorgon over, you can see, and he also takes the charge with his Minotaur here, and he goes into the Sabertusk. Now you can see where he places Gorgon is a really good placement here because his Minotaur will have to overrun because of their Blood Greed rule here, and they'll just connect with the Gorgon and bounce back to where they are right now. So it won't put him in too bad of a position. He won't be too overexposed here. His Magician's Bunker moves up behind to support and cast magic. And in the center here, his Vestigor and his Gore with additional hand weapons move up into the fringe of the forest here. And his Tuskgore chariot moves up as well. His Hounds and his Spawn take the corner around the building. And in the magic phase, he casts Miasma on my Mournfang for -2 movement. So there'll be movement 6 during my turn, which will make any possible charge a wee bit harder. And he also goes for a Pit of Shades. He throws 3 or 4 dice at it, and he rolls a double 6, so he gets Irresistible Force. He puts the template in the center of the bull unit. It's the best shot he's got within 24 inches there. And he scatters off and hits a single Iron Gut. And that one Iron Gut, to add insult to injury, actually passes his initiative test. And then in the backlash, he loses 3 wizard levels. He loses all his spells except for his Enfeebling's Foes. So he's down to a level 1, which is a pretty crippling blow for Beastmen. They really need their magic to buff their army, and now he's only a level 1. In the combat here, the Minotaur go munch on the Sabertusk, and they overrun, bounce into the Gorgon, and stay pretty much put. So we move into Ogres turn 2. I take my Stonehorn on the far right, and I charge his chariot. He elects to flee because we know the outcome of that. And I redirect properly into this Gore unit, and I take my other Stonehorn and I charge, and I make it with both of them, and I get an Ogre charge on the one on the right. So that is some massive impact goodness. Now I take my bull unit, and I need a 7 to get into the side of his Minotaur. And this is what I was thinking at this point. If he had saw this properly, I think the right move would not have been casting Miasma on the Mournfang, but casting Miasma on the bulls, because had he measured it properly, I only needed a 7 to get in, which is exactly average dice for, ogres making a charge. This particular charge. And I made the charge. Had he put Miasma and -2 movement on this ogre unit, had he had seen it, they would have failed this charge, and I would not have got into the flank of his Minotaur here. So yeah, that's a bad break for the Beastmen and a huge break for the Ogres, because I really don't want to take the Minotaurs face on with that unit, because I know the Minotaurs would just chew them up. But in the flank, I'll take my chances. Hopefully I'll be able to break them. And that leaves a tricky predicament right with the Iron Guts, because I want to be within 12 inches to be able to buff that unit, so I'm forced to move my Iron Guts up. And the bad part is that puts them in decent charge range of the Vestigor. Now the Vestigor can't make it through that gap right now because of the unit. He can charge into my bull unit and probably do some serious damage, probably break it, but all the points is in my gut unit, and he can't get to it to where the combat is right now. And then I take my Mournfang and I charge. It was an easy charge. Even with -2 movement, I charge into the Gorgon. And there you can see how the bulls connected into the Minotaur's flank here. And the Mournfang did make an ogre charge, so that's always nice. In the magic phase, I go to town. I'm a level 4. He's a level 1. I got the Blood Gruel rule, so I just get off Toothcracker. Then I get a Bull Gorge, and I get Troll Guts. So these guys are Strength 5, Toughness 5, and a 4+ regen, so they're nigh indestructible. The Lead Belchers open up and take another wound off this chariot here. And in the combat here, the Gorgon munches down an entire Mournfang, which is a little better than I thought it would do. And in the backlash, I'm only managed to inflict 5 wounds on the Gorgon, so the Gorgon stands, much to my dismay. And in the combat here with the Minotaur, he does 2 wounds to me, which is pretty lucky to do considering I'm toughness 5 with a 4+ regen. And I haul off, I'm strength 5 now. I do 10 wounds to the Minotaur. The Minotaur break, and I chase him down, and in the pursuit, I run into the flank of the Gorgon. I should have seen this as a cascading combat beforehand, but I didn't. But I don't think it was really necessary. I'm not really worried about winning this combat. And the only bad part about my overrun is it does take me out of range. I believe it takes me out of range of the best to go to get in my flank, but it does open up to go into my gut unit, which I'm a little leery about, but them's the breaks. In the combat here, the Stonehorns do a massive amount of impact hits, and 20 of these gore are taken straight off the table by combat's end. You see here, I killed them exactly down to 10. I needed 1 more to break steadfast, and I failed to kill that 1 extra guy. So he's actually steadfast on his general's leadership, rerollable. Had I just killed 1 more guy, things would have been alright. But it wasn't meant to be, so he sticks his leadership, and he does a wound to the Stonehorn. His turn 3, out of desperation, he takes his hounds and goes into flank of my Stonehorns here. The Bestigor move into my Iron Gut unit. They were out of the front charge arc, or the side charge arc of my bulls here. So the Guts was the next best step, and that is where all my points are. If he can win some challenges, or focus down some heroes, or just decimate the unit, or break me, he'll win a serious amount of points back here. He fails to rally his chariot, and his chariot continues to flee. His chariot and his Razorgore reform to crash into the rear of my Mournfang if the Mournfang are still engaged with Gorgon. He reforms his magic user's bunker here. He could have gone into the side of the gut unit, but the gut unit's the bull unit, excuse me, or the bull unit is all buffed up with strength and toughness 5 and a 4+ regen. So he decides just to angle it around here and get some enfeebling foe, hopefully, on my general's unit. And he throws a whole bucket load of dice at it, and I just throw my Dispel Scroll. I really can't afford to be enfeebled this round. And in the combat here, he does 2 more wounds to my Mournfang, and my Mournfang finish him off. So the Gorgon dies, and I reform like so. My Bull unit reforms to face the side of his Gore unit here with his Magic Caster, and my Mournfang face the opposite direction to clean up the left flank. And there you can see a better idea of the picture of the reform here. And the combat over here, a pretty paltry showing without the impact hits here. The Stonehorns only fell 5 of the Hounds and then 6 of the Gore. And they managed to do a wound to each Stonehorn here. However, they both flee. I chase them both down. They both are destroyed. And in one of the chasing downs over here, I get into contact with the spawn. In the mega combat here with my Guts versus his Bestigor, his Beast Lord issues a challenge, and I feed him my Ogre Champion. Now, the Ogre Champion did stand tall and survive the attacks, but when he made a few armor saves, made a few more attacks as the Ramhorn Helm, and then he fell my Ogre Champion. It was just too much for him. So my Ogre Champion dies. He does a wound to my Slaughtermaster. He does 5 wounds to the unit. However, I haul off and do 10 wounds back to him. And the combat ends up being a pretty close combat, and nobody breaks. We all stick there and get to have fun for 1 more round at least. And Ogre's turn 3, I take my Mournfang and I go into his chariot here, because why not? My Sabertusk moves behind here in case he breaks. I can try and make him take a difficult terrain test. If I can't finish him off, maybe he can roll a 1 and just die. My Bulls charge into the side of his Gore unit here, his bunker. My Stonehorn charges the Chariot off the board, and my other Sabertusk here moves. So if my Bulls here break this Gore unit with his caster, they'll have to make some difficult terrain tests, pop out the other side of the Sabertusk, and who knows, if there's still enough of them left, they might have to pop through the building. In the magic phase, I get up Bull Gorger. It's the only spell he lets me get off, and I heal the wound done to my Slaughtermaster previously. The Lead Belchers open up and take 2 wounds off this Razor Gore. Not enough to kill it, but it's almost there. In the combat phase, the Mournfang topple the Chariot and completely disassemble it on sight. In the combat over here with the Gore and my Bulls, he does 1 wound to my Bulls, and I do 9 wounds to the unit. He breaks and he runs, and I can't catch him down. He flees to the other side of the Sabertusk. The Stonehorn takes care of the spawn and just overruns. And in the combat over here, the Beast Lord issues a challenge, and my Bruiser BSB accepts. I do a wound to him. He does a wound to me. He puts another wound on my Slaughtermaster. He does 8 wounds to my unit. I do 10 wounds to him. I win the combat, but he ends up breaking, and I run him down. And that signals the end of the game. So this game can really come down to two key moments. One is the miscast turn 1. With the spell set he had some pretty devastating potential, and once he became a level 1 caster, those spells, the scary spells, went away, and I was able to get my buffing spells off in key turns, and he couldn't stop me, especially with a Blood Gruul rule. As long as I didn't roll the 1, I just kept getting +5 to cast, and it was just, he couldn't catch it as hard as he tried, and that really just turned the tide. The second one is the Miasma he cast on my Mournfang instead of the Bulls. Had he cast out on the Bulls, I wouldn't have been able to get his Minotaur. His Minotaur would have probably had a much bigger impact on the game as opposed to just getting run down and easily defeated. So we can chalk this game up to those 2 key moments. At least that's what I saw as the pivotal moments in this game. And that turn 1 miscast led to just magic dominance. I was casting spells at will, and especially just to get rid of that Minotaur unit there, that was huge. And I was really set up in this game, with the Ogres movement 6, and I had 8 on the Stonehorns and 8 on the Sabertusk. I mean, on the Mournfang and on the Sabertusk. I just had a lot of things going in the movement phase and the charges. I made every charge. I didn't flop one rule. And when you're rolling with the Ogres, and if you're rolling to win, you're rolling to make charges. And I made those charges. Those impact hits really help, along with the stomps, especially against infantry. And going against an army that was almost all infantry, I really had some really good matchups here. And just a side note on the Sabertusk, one thing I noticed is when I wasn't facing against shooting, they become a lot more versatile. I don't have to worry about a lot of panic tests and the panic bubbles, that shooting or magic missiles would possibly create. And in some games, Sabertusk are key players and play the biggest roles, and in some aspects, they really do absolutely nothing, and they just crap the bed. In this game, 2 of the Sabertusk really didn't have a purpose, but that one Sabertusk was worth all 20-some-odd points it is, and getting the Minotaurs to make that charge and put in that bad leery position there really made the game a lot easier for me, and really ensured my victory very early on. Just that one Sabertusk. So they're either hit or miss, but when they hit hard, and when they miss, hey, I'd rather have them than not. So victory to the Ogres. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you guys next time.